12th, a couple of minutes late, but better late than never, in sunny Central Florida. I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
So, Jeremy, it was a week ago today that you and I said we're going to be a little busier that next tracking the tropics Tuesday, and I think here's exact case in point. We are busier. We have ourselves a named storm out there.
Yeah, we have Tropical Storm Erin. It looked like last night, again, some of that dusty, dry air that's going to encounter here the next few days sort of capped off any potential. What wasn't as, let's say, pretty looking on the infrared satellite. So we'll see how that looks here coming up.
Yeah, just looking at that satellite imagery right now, it's definitely not looking fantastic, right? Like that much we could tell. When we kind of get an idea of the direction here, where it moves, the overall idea is such that we're basically looking at a storm system that's wanting to go off into an area of Saharan dust. Here's a look as a oh, give me a second. Of course, I don't have that set up. There we go. There's a lot of Saharan dust. That's all I was trying to show Jeremy is this idea that there's just a whole bunch of Saharan dust there.
Yeah, and that dust, again, we've been dealing with that the entire Atlantic hurricane season. So it kind of limits or prevents tropical development. And this is in its own little environment for the time, but it does have some of that dusty, dry air wrapped around it.
Right. So here's a look at the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And very clearly, we can see the storm system itself, Jeremy, is moving off toward the west. It's going to be a slow grower, we think, because of the idea that it is moving through some Saharan dust. But eventually, that Saharan dust is going to stop. And once it does, that's going to be the opportunity to develop and become, we think, a stronger storm. And that's where the National Hurricane Center is calling this to become a major hurricane.
Yeah, and that would probably be a little bit farther down the road. So we're thinking maybe as we go into this weekend is kind of what it looks like right now.
Yeah, yep. So into this weekend, that's where we get the opportunity to see it perhaps become a hurricane, a major hurricane, certainly eventually. And that would not only be the first hurricane of the season, that would be the first major hurricane, Jeremy, of the season as well.
Yeah, we have not even we have not had a hurricane. The average date of the first hurricane is on August the 11th, and then the first major hurricanes usually sometime that first half of September. So if we would see a major hurricane, that's a little earlier than average, and if we do not see a major hurricane, that still averages until September. Average date of the first hurricane though is August 11th. So we're starting to get a little behind on that.
Right. And very clearly, even if it's dealing with that Saharan dust, even if it's dealing with that dry air, just in looking right now on the visible satellite presentation, remember, I mean, the sun has been up here for a little while here in Florida and in the southeast United States back over to Georgia. But it's been up for a while over Tropical Storm Erin. And even if the satellite on the infrared scale doesn't necessarily present this as a decent organized circulation, the visible is always a higher resolution look. And Jeremy, the visible is certainly looking much, much better there.
Yeah, the swirl is very easy to pick out, sort of that little donut looking thing there. The infrared satellite that shows some thunderstorms, nothing all that impressive. Last night we had some of those red colors there, which is the deeper convection around it or the taller thunderstorms. And those, again, kind of eroded away early this morning.
Right, right. So that's why it's not expected to rapidly intensify. So to that point, the Hurricane Center I think is doing a fantastic job. Here's the forecast model data from the National Hurricane Center and from various sources, and what we very clearly see is a nice, frankly, a real tight consensus of data, not just in the near term, but look as it all wants to kind of recurve a little bit further down the way, away from the Bahamas, away from the Caribbean islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, right? And starting to make that right hand turn, potentially impacting Bermuda. We'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah, so those spaghetti plots that we're looking at right there, we're still pretty far out. So they're going to get bumped maybe a little bit more north, down to the south. We look for the trends over a few day period. And right now, the trend is a good one for us here from the
Yeah.
east coast of Florida to the southeast coastline. I know a lot of people, I post things and they're like, you don't know this far out, this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, the other option is we just no one ever talks about it, and
Right.
you're back to like pre-satellite area where you just get surprised by these. So no, we're always going to talk about these, give you the best idea we have. And right now, it certainly looks like the steering currents would allow this to get pushed up to the north as we go this weekend into early next week.
So what I've done here, Jeremy, you're first off, you're always spot on. But we're going to share the information just because it's at this point in society our responsibility. But we're going to do it with perspective. So to that point, this is something kind of special that I like to show when tracking the tropics. Jeremy was talking about trends and how trends are looking good. So this is looking at the last 6 model runs on Tropical Storm Erin. And what you see is the boldest yellow, that is the most recent run. I've got the arrow pointing at it. And each run prior kind of fades a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So what we were watching yesterday was, I don't want to say it was concerning, but what we were watching yesterday was this kind of, we started with this here, and then it started ticking more and more and more to the left. And then this morning, we started seeing it coming back to the right. So yesterday, the question was, are we starting to see a bit of a shift, or was this just the windshield wiper effect? And I'm happy to say it looks like it was, in fact, just the windshield wiper effect.
Yeah, and we'll get another run here in about 1 to 2 hours. The 12D
No,
GFS
this
will
is
update.
this is the 12Z. This is the 12Z.
The 12Z what?
With the consensus, so all of the spaghetti plots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. But the actual like the operational will be
Right, right,
updating
right.
later this morning into the afternoon, and that's our next sort of update for the GFS, the European, all of those. Also, now we obviously look at the AI models that are out there. So the European that updates several times a day. And you're right. Yesterday it was kind of on that little southern trend, and then now I would say overnight it picked up that idea. Now we're more onto the recurve.
Yeah, and love that as well. And another thing that we could do, Jeremy, you were talking about the new GFS coming in shortly. So let's do this. This is something pretty new. And I haven't even told you about this yet, Jeremy. So
Okay.
we've got the ability now to be able to look at the operational GFS, and in addition to it, plot ensemble members, just to kind of give an idea. So this is the 6Z. This is the morning run of the American GFS model. Now, first off, before we get any deeper, why the heck would I want to do this? Well, because I want to show you how the ensemble members don't necessarily link up to the operational. And the wider these areas of low pressure go, these little red L's, the less confident you should be into the forecast, right? Is that kind of a good way to explain it, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think so. So you're just running the model all kinds of different ways here on these ensembles, and that's why you'll probably start to see the lows diverge a little bit, but
Oh yeah.
really keep an eye on where they're concentrated. There should be a cluster that's a little more defined than the others.
Right. All right. So let's do this. So this is 3 o'clock Saturday, as in this Saturday. Okay. You can see it outside of the Caribbean islands, outside of the Dominican Republic, Haiti, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. But watch how through time, those lows, those little red L's start to spread out. That lets you know that the confidence isn't there. The different versions of the GFS, they're starting to spread out a little bit, right? Continuing through, that's Monday, that's Tuesday. Watch how much wider they are. That's a week from today. That's 2 o'clock. We'll have to add the date to this, but that's 7 o'clock Tuesday, and you can see those low locations from about the Turks and Caicos all the way to outside of Bermuda. So while the operational model, that green blob, is where it is, you can kind of get an idea of how the uncertainty plays in there.
Yeah, and what I like though is that when you started it, there wasn't like a huge spread of those. They
Right,
were pretty concentrated,
right,
all staying a decent amount north of those Leeward and Windward Islands. So not going to say that for sure they're in the clear because you can still get some um, impacts on the outer edge, depending, especially if this would be a stronger hurricane at that
right,
point.
right.
But it does look like the threat is much greater for an island like Bermuda versus maybe the Bahamas or getting closer to the U.S.
Right. And you can see very clearly there that while the operational is perhaps very much bullseyed on Bermuda, you can see those ensemble members. Some of them are over near the Bahamas, some of them are all the way. The ensembles spread, and that's what we're looking at here. Is you kind of look and you can see they're fairly tightly packed, but through time, those L's start to spread out, which lets you know that that ensemble idea starts to spread in timing and spacing and positioning and all that. So the confidence goes downhill pretty quickly once you get to about Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right? I mean, through here, it's very tightly packed. But once you get outside of this weekend, that's when the ensembles are starting to spread out a pretty good way. So that's kind of something fancy now that we get to track that we're working on this morning here in the Weather Center.
And something I like is that we're not really seeing any of those lows touching Florida, Georgia, or South Carolina.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if call a spade there, that's absolutely ideal, right? And it's a good thing because this thing is expected to get strong. Look at the intensity models, okay, Jeremy. I mean, like the models are not only bringing this to a tropical storm status, right? They're there already, but they're bringing it into hurricane status. Although, frankly, it looks like the 12Z may have come down on intensity just a little bit.
That's very possible. There's all that dusty, dry air, so it may have a little bit of trouble figuring out. Okay, is this going to just kind of meander through the dust, and
Yeah,
then it'll develop very quickly once it's in more favorable conditions. Also, the water does get warmer when it's north of those island chains.
right.
The water is warmer there in the southwestern Atlantic. Not that it's cool right now, but you're fighting the dust, maybe water temperature, sea surface temps not quite as warm there. So the environment does get better overall with the winds, the dust situation, and also water temperatures. Right now, it's just a swirl out in the Atlantic. And I keep telling people it takes a long time for these to cross over the open water. So this is something we'll just be watching over the water for several days.
Well, and you had mentioned that, Jeremy, and it's kind of interesting. So we've got this product here that just kind of illustrates, assuming it's headed for a straight line distance, okay? Assuming it's headed that direction, it's in that light yellow shade. I mean, so you're really looking at about a 10 to 12 day trek, assuming it's heading right to the US. Obviously, it's not really doing that, but even if it was,
Right.
so yeah, there's a lot of time to track this thing as its progression takes it more and more off toward kind of that west northwest heading.
Yeah, so I would say the good news is we look at the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. We have not really seen any models that dive it more like say southwest.
Right.
It's either west northwest or farther down the road, getting like northwest, turning to the north, maybe even the northeast farther down the road. So this is the very latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll get an update here probably in the next about 30 to 40 minutes or so. And then we'll see. Maybe they'll bring that intensity down just a little bit
Yeah.
here over the next 3 or 4 days. And then it'll be curious once it gets into that Southwest Atlantic. Pretty much all models show some pretty quick development or
Yeah.
strengthening. And that may be the time window where we start to see it reach the major hurricane.
And that makes total sense, right? Because it's going to be out of the shear, it's going to be out of the Saharan dust, it's going to be into into some of the hottest waters that we see in the basin. So that's where it should do its thing. One thing that Scott points out, Scott Patton on YouTube points out, Jeremy, and he's so right. He says if it stays weaker longer, then it moves west. We always say weaker goes west when it comes to these tropical things, and that's exactly the way that this is playing out here.
Yeah. So very hopeful that's how it is down the road. But again, these are forecasts. They're not exact realities here that we're dealing with. So we'll continue to look at the trends. But as you're showing there, some of the steering currents with
Yeah.
this, and it's all about that the high pressure ridge, that Bermuda high out there, then maybe a little trough tries to dip in that would give it an escape route, which is maybe just on sort of that edge of the blue area. And then weaker storms that you're showing there, they may not get that pull to the north and
Right.
it's kind of slip underneath the ridge and continue westerly. But at this point, I don't really think this storm is showing that at the moment. But again, long way, so we'll be watching it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. That's why we do these tracking the tropics broadcasts, right? So at least at this moment in time, I wouldn't say that it's an all clear call, right? But at this moment in time, things are looking good. The models are not showing a consistent slide. They're kind of bouncing back and forth, that windshield wiper effect, which is exactly what you would want when it comes to the consensus of the computer forecast models. The more that we can see that, and there's again another look at it, the more we can see that, Jeremy, back and forth. It at least lets you know that they're not making massive shifts. Years ago, a massive shift on a model was a pretty regular thing.
Yeah, and do you have the European ensembles?
Yeah, I can dial that up. Give me a few seconds here.
If we, even if it's not that nice, pretty version that
It's not, but
you've
I can get
created.
it.
So Eric has created some. He's working on more and more things for our weather graphic systems, the ones you see on TV. Otherwise, we just rely on some of the other forecast pages that anyone can go to. But we'll take a look at the European ensembles just to give you an idea. And then I think after that, as you run this, let's talk about Aaron, and then how some models are showing maybe a low trailing this that could also be of note later in August.
Right. So there's the Euro ensembles, and you see they're tightly packed. This is Sunday at 2 p.m. Fairly tightly packed. Watch how those ensembles really spread, though, getting into late Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's another example there of, we get further down the way, and the confidence kind of comes down a little bit in terms of where this ends up. So I think that that's a really good example of that.
Yeah, and all those again look like they're to the east of Florida
Yep.
and off the southeast coast.
Yep. All right. So let's go back to the operational euro because Jeremy, you were talking about that next little feature there. Let's come over here to pressure, normalized anomaly. So there's Erin, and the European wants to go with what's that pressure? That's 975 millibars and continuing to drop. But beyond Erin, so Erin goes and passes, and then right at the end here, that little thing right there on the bottom right corner, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so the question would be, do some of those tropical waves that are exiting the west coast of Africa, which would be could be some of those waves right now or in the next day or so, will they sort of trail this only on a little bit farther route to the south? This is again that's really not too far from the Erin track that we see there, that little low that is northeast of Puerto Rico.
Right.
And if you run it forward again, keep in mind we're going really far out in time, but it is something I think that we probably want to at least discuss here a little
Well,
bit.
and because, what is the date on that on the top of that screen there? That is Tuesday, August 26th, okay? So August 26th. Let's come over to our long range forecasting and let's look at some of these dates because from about the 25th of August to September 3rd, we know using the cycling weather pattern that we'll
Yep.
have to watch that northern Gulf area for a reoccurrence of what was at one point Raphael.
Yeah, and as we discussed, we go all the way back to February 28th when we put our long range forecast out. That part of the pattern had Raphael, and it also had another low that was just off to the east of Florida, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yep.
So I think that very late August time frame, say Aaron does that curve, stays way away from us, and then we get the second low, whatever it does, we have to watch it because there were actually two lows in that part of the pattern.
Right.
So it could be we could be busy here. We could get Aaron, and then we'd have to see what happens with that low. Again, not all models are showing that, but the European, again, we're a little more reliant on the European. Some of the ensembles with that, and also the AI version of the European model continues to show a low, potentially trailing Aaron that would come in sometime very late August.
And I think that said, that is the more, and you just said it, right? Like that's the more interesting feature for you and I is going to be that trailing low that the models are just starting to think about, but have not quite gotten there yet. So I think that for now, knowing this part of the pattern, and then of course coming over and looking at the European kind of picking something up. If we get over, let's look at the Euro AI. You had mentioned the Euro AI. Let's go to the Euro AI. Um, Obviously there's a ton of lows, so there's Aaron, right? Aaron's doing
Yep.
its thing. And then after Aaron, we start to see the Euro AI showing a massive swath of geography, but a lot of those ensemble members are trying to show another area of low pressure. If we look at just the operational Euro AI, give me a second. If we just look at the operational, it's got it very clearly there. And where is
Right.
it heading? It's kind of heading right to that hotspot that we had discussed. That's Wednesday, August 27th. Okay. And look at the timeline. August 25th to September 3rd. What's the location? We've got it in the Panhandle on the Euro AI. The Panhandle happens to be our hotspot in that exact date range. So that
Yep.
would fit the pattern.
Yes, and also when Raphael formed again, that's what we kind of tie this to. And you can always go back. We have all of our forecast documented, the explanations. So that's a good read if you want to take a few minutes to do that. Raphael moved across, I believe, the western part of Cuba. So
Yep.
these are super long range models that we're looking at right now, 300 plus hours. But what we're doing is just trying to see if they're hinting at anything that
Right.
kind of matches up with the pattern that we talked about coming up.
So how can people see your version of the long range forecast, and then I can tell everybody where to find mine as well.
I usually just tell people search WJCL 2025 hurricane season forecast, and
Yep.
then it pops up to the top.
Yep. Well, and I guess you could
That's
do
the
that. You could do that too for the WESH 22. It's the same forecast. At the end of the day, when
yeah.
you're going and looking online, it's do you want Jeremy's penmanship and the way he writes an article, or do you want mine? I mean, really, because it's the exact same thing. Jeremy and I co-author the thing together, so it's not like the data is going to be any different.
No, no. So you can either have WJCL or you can have WESH, or you can click on both and help us out both that way too.
Yeah, grammatically, which one of us is worse, etc., etc.
So I think, yeah, maybe we'll end up having to do another update late this week. We'll see how things play
Yeah.
out, but as of right now, all the different computer models are really consistent on a westerly track, and then it's maybe this weekend where we start to see more of a motion northwest, and then hopefully that track almost due north.
Yep. So we'll continue to monitor that. And of course, we'll be posting on our social channels. Jeremy will have you covered on WJCL 22, and I will have you covered on WESH 2. I'm in all week long in the morning. So that's all we've got. We kind of looked at this thing and potentially the next thing and talked about how this next thing is a little more interesting, I think, for a potential United States landfall, right?
Yeah, or at least something that probably the pattern would support would get closer
Right.
to the area. And really, the big wild card, and it's even playing out with Aaron right now, is that dusty, dry air. Do you have that graphic with that we could just maybe just show an image of it, kind of how it is right now?
Which
There's just so much
which
dust
one are you
out there.
referring to? Oh, the Saharan air layer?
Saharan dust.
Yeah,
Just so people get an idea, that has not gone away at all.
Yep.
So this is still something that these lows will continue to probably try to fight through as they move across the main development region.
Right,
And
right.
it also is, I think, 100% a reason why maybe we haven't had quite as much activity so far this year. A
Right.
lot of those lows have just gotten chewed up.
Well, and look at how the Saharan dust is kind of encircling where, this is looking forward in time, but that Saharan dust is encircling where Aaron is. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Aaron's not expected to like blow up into a big bad hurricane very quickly. So, to that point, it's not going to be until we turn off the Saharan dust and really get into the monsoonal flow on Africa that we're going to be able to get hurricane season cranking. I don't think you or I are encouraging that sort of behavior, though,
No,
from Mother Nature at all.
no, but one thing we want to watch here, if you just pause it maybe on anywhere this weekend, is that if those tropical waves would get south of that
Yep.
layer,
Yep.
maybe they have a better environment to make it across the Atlantic because the Cabo Verde Islands there. Notice how the dust is kind of there
Yep.
north. So
Yep.
if a low would be south of there, it would be in a better environment.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, all right, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're just tracking the dust, tracking Aaron, and then the potential of the next thing. So, I think that's all I've got, my friend. Do you have anything else you can think of?
No, I think that is it for today. But again, maybe we'll hop on later this week if needed.
Yeah, yeah, we got you covered, y'all. Don't you worry. All right, questions before we go. Questions. Somebody said Terry's asking someday. Please explain what motivates the curve. I think that's one of those. If you Terry, if you want to Google the Coriolis force, what's wild is one of the reasons these storms want to recurve is actually the Earth's rotation on its axis.
Yeah, right angles to the right. Isn't that? I think
Yeah,
that's how I remembered it.
yeah. Which
So
I
that
I I don't know. Did you have like I had a professor in weather school that he just took like a piece of paper and he was rotating it as he was drawing it. Like the way that he explained the Coriolis force was mind-boggling.
right. Yep. It's And then you start, yeah, some of those classes I'm having flashbacks now, and then you start getting all the math and
Ugh,
all those things in
I'm
it, and
out.
I'm like,
I'm out.
no.
I'm out.
Yeah, we're not, we refuse to do calculus at all during our tracking the tropics
Yeah.
on Tuesdays.
The folks don't pay enough admission to be able to do that sort of thing, I think.
Right. I didn't have AI around back then to maybe help me out or give me some clues. It
It's
was,
wild, yeah.
whew.
Jamie Lopez is mentioning, but I thought the Earth was flat. All right, Trish is asking a really good question. How long is the Saharan dust usually present every season, Jeremy?
I mean, I think it varies, but I would say going on. I mean, it was around in June, July. It's still out there. This seems like an excessive amount this year.
This is an excessive amount. I find typically late July into early August is when it really shuts off, and it's just not at the moment yet doing that. So yeah, it is an excessive, and it's one of those things. It's like I wonder how the heck we could figure out a way to forecast that. I feel like that is the one variable that if you could, like Madden Julian oscillation, El Nino, the Enzo, all of these other things those contribute. The one thing that we don't forecast that I feel like is the biggest contributor is the Saharan dust. And if we could figure out a way to do that, first off, you and I would at least be in the history books. But
Right.
aside from that, I feel like that is the biggest variable that we have no ability to forecast yet.
Yeah, I think you'd have to just look at maybe the mid level or upper level setup, and then kind of translate that down. Are we just going to have persistent easterly winds across Africa paired up with dry weather? So, assuming you don't have a lot of maybe monsoonal or thunderstorms, and maybe I don't know, it'd have to just deal with probably a long fetch easterly wind.
Right, right. All right. Well, let's work on let's ask AI. See what it'll do for
Yeah,
us. All
or
right.
we get like maybe the next round of interns that we have, we can get them to
I
help us research.
I've got real intern turned fake
Oh,
intern again. He's he's
ah,
he's here.
okay.
So we'll get him to work on it.
Well, they now have homework, right?
You hear that? You've got some homework, okay? He's like, "Oh, great." As he's doing other homework right now. So, all right. All right, that's all I've got. Anything else?
No, I think that's good.
Very good. From sunny Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
Bye everybody.